Now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines, deep in the trenches of the Patriot resistance, leading the charge in the battle for liberty, this is the Jayson Veley Program.
Hello, my friends. Jayson Veley here. This is the Jayson Veley Program, the one and only. The email address, if you want to send us a note, the Jayson Veley Program at gmail.com, the Jayson Veley Program at gmail.com, or pick up the phone, give us a call, and leave a voicemail. 860-266-2852 is the number, 860-266-2852. Before we get into what I really want to get into tonight, there's a lot that I want to talk about. I want to clarify my position on the Derek Chauvin verdict, because I talked about it briefly yesterday. The verdict came out not long before after I went on the air, so I didn't really have a chance to digest it and to formulate my thoughts, and therefore I don't think I explained myself as well as I could have or should have on yesterday's podcast. So I just want to clarify my position on this just so that there's no confusion. I am surprised that he was found guilty on all charges. I am a bit surprised about that. However, I'm happy that justice has been served. I'm happy that, the American justice system worked as it should. This is the justice system, by the way, that has been in existence in this country for decades. This is the justice system that our founding fathers put in place. And I'd argue that it's the best in the world. It did what it was supposed to do here. Derek Chauvin was taken through the process. He was heard, tried before a jury. The jury came to a conclusion, and he was convicted. Now, again, I'm surprised that he was found guilty on all of the charges, but I do think that justice needed to be served here. And this is something that I mentioned yesterday, and I'm going to double down on it. Look, I'm all for defending police officers. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone who supports the cops much more than I do. But I've also said for a very, very long time, as a matter of fact, I've said this since I started political commentary years back, is that when we do have bad apples in the police force, we need to deal with them. I don't believe in making up excuses for every single action for every single police officer now and forever. That's not what I'm about. That's not what I'm about. And so it's my belief, my opinion, that what happened last year on May 25th, 2020 was absolutely unexcusable. Absolutely unexcusable. You could argue that George Floyd had drugs in his system. I know that's an argument that I've heard come up many times before. But it is not standard police procedure to hold someone's to place your knee on someone's throat and hold it there for 9 minutes, the full weight of your body, as he's screaming for his mother, screaming, "I can't breathe, I'm going to die, I'm going to die." 9 minutes of that. As a cop, you're crushing his throat, watching the life drain out of his eyes. That is not standard police procedure. It's just not. That's unexcusable. I said it yesterday. I'm going to say it again today. Unexcusable. Absolutely unexcusable. And so, yes, I am happy that justice has been served. This was a bad apple cop. When I talk about the bad apples out there, Derek Chauvin was one of them. He was. That's my opinion on it. You could hate me for that. I've gotten a lot of feedback on TikTok and my different social media platforms. Many people disagree with me. That's fine. I'm just giving you my opinion. So I just wanted to clarify that before we get into it here. That's my position on things. Now, let me get into something that's really, really concerning me. was thinking about this yesterday, and honestly, I couldn't wait to get on the air today to talk about this. But I heard, I honestly, I play clips of this guy more than I should on this podcast. Van Jones reacting earlier today to the verdict, Derek Chauvin's conviction. And he said something that, again, got me thinking and got me extremely worried. Something that I want to talk about. Here's a clip from CNN earlier today. Van Jones, again, a radical, self-described communist. That's who this guy is. Here's what he had to say. Take a listen.
Waking up this morning, what, if anything, is different?
Well, it can be. It can be something new. I'll put it that way. This was not the system working. This was people making the system work.
This was not the system working. This was people making the system work. No, this was the system working. This is the system. This is the system that we've had in place for decades. I know you liberals like to say that it's completely broken. It's not. This is Derek Chauvin was dragged through the same legal process that thousands upon thousands have been dragged through. Millions have been dragged through before him. Yes, justice was served. Yes, this was an example of the legal process working. Keep listening.
That's the key. Don't forget, initially the police report said, oh, there was a medical incident, somebody died. What do we know? The initial charging document from the local prosecutor was a joke, literally a piece of tissue paper that somebody sneezed on, nothing. People rose up and said, we're not going to let this go. The governor stepped in, gave that case to Keith Ellison, who's an African-American Muslim progressive guy that everybody rallied around before to get in office. Keith Ellison put so many resources on the table. You've never seen a prosecution like that of anybody. I mean, you go back to John Gotti days to make sure that the right thing happened. And so what happened is the voting worked. You can tell the young people now, voting matters. The protesting worked. You can tell young people, marching matters. And the truth, the fact that people got involved with their video cameras and captured it, citizen engagement matters. So there's a formula now that you can begin to show people we can make the system work for change. That's what's new.
You think radical left-wing groups are hearing what Van Jones is saying right there and taking it to mean rioting works? You think radical groups, radical BLM activists, Antifa activists are hearing what Van Jones is saying and hearing, if I go out and riot and burn things and flip over cars and destroy businesses just to make a point, just so that I can, quote unquote, be heard, this is how we get things done. I guarantee you, whether he knows it or not, and I believe that Van Jones does know it, that's the message he was sending. That's the message he was sending. He's saying, okay, we have a formula now. Protesting, rioting, even though he didn't explicitly say rioting. He says it works. It works. So now, what I'm worried about is this going to continue? I think it is, and I think it's going to get worse. What's going to happen whenever we have another incident like this, and there will be other incidents, and they will be, many of them will be exaggerated or exacerbated by the mainstream media, taken to new heights. These sort of things, there will be more George Floyds, unfortunately. Just as there will be, many more white people killed by cops or what have you. But this controversy won't go away. The liberals will have, continue to push this narrative. And whenever another tragedy like this happens, I fear that the immediate reaction, the initial reaction, is going to be rioting and looting from now on, because they think that that's the magic formula. They think that that's the magic formula. They now are walking away from this, saying to themselves, okay, look at that. If I riot and I loot and I burn things, they're going to hear me, the courts are going to hear me, and they're going to hold cops accountable. They're going to go and get the cops. Folks, this is a dangerous precedent, is it not? Is it not? Instead of letting the courts be independent of all this political mumbo-jumbo, of all this external pressure, instead of letting the courts solely focus on the facts in each individual case, I fear that from now on, they're going to succumb to external pressure. They're not going to want to see cities burn. They're not going to want to rile people up. And so time and time again, I fear that these courts are going to be making decisions not based on the facts, but based on, hey, I don't want to piss these people off. A dangerous precedence. That's what this sets, ladies and gentlemen. The courts in many ways are being held hostage by people like Van Jones, radical BLM activists, Antifa, and the rest of them. They're being held hostage. And if we get to a point where, again, judges across the country are making decisions not really based on the facts, not really based on the evidence that has been presented to them, but based on direct or indirect threats of violence, of rioting and looting in the streets, that's a big problem, folks. We are in trouble if we get to that point. And I would argue that we're quickly approaching that point. I would. And so this is going to be a pattern now, unfortunately. Because they've learned through the Derek Chauvin verdict that if I loot, if I burn things, if I go out and destroy businesses, if I riot, we will get our way. This is how we win. And so it's going to continue. They think they have the magic formula. And the courts are going to likely feel threatened by this. And in a way coerced into making a decision that they may or may not have otherwise made had they just simply looked at the facts and the evidence and ignored all this external pressure. Hope I'm making sense here. I think I am. But that's what's terrifying to me, ladies and gentlemen. I think that the courts are being held hostage. And it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. Now, of course, the liberals aren't letting up on the whole systemic racism narrative. You have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris out there today, Dumb and Dumber, addressing the nation, making a complete mockery of the highest office in the land, talking about how America is systemically racist, how the police have institutionalized racism. I mean, it was a joke. Let's get to some audio. Here's Kamala Harris responding to the Derek Chauvin verdict. Take a listen.
This work is long overdue. America has a long history of systemic racism.
Black Americans. Let me stop. Can someone please define for me systemic racism? Can someone please define for me institutionalized, widespread racism? What do they mean by this? That America as a whole, America's institutions, are inherently racist? How so? How so? Which institution is inherently racist? How is it racist? How is it acting in a way that gives whites an advantage over minorities? Tell me. Tell me. What legal advantages do whites have in this country that are not afforded to minorities? Can someone tell me that? You want to talk about systemic racism? I think we should hold the left's feet to the fire and force them to explain themselves, because they keep going on and on and on with this narrative. And they just expect all of us to buy into it. Yeah, I agree. Systemic racism. We have systemic racism. Someone needs to stand up and say, you know what? Prove it. Explain yourself. If we're going to remodel our entire society, restructure our entire police force based on these claims of systemic racism, You better be able to provide some evidence of that. And so far, I've seen none. Nothing legitimate whatsoever. I've seen a ton of anecdotal stuff, but nothing significant. I've read you studies on this program that indicate that in the American police force, race is really left out of the equation when it comes to things like the shooting of unarmed suspects and so on and so forth. I've read you studies that indicate that unarmed whites are actually more likely to be shot by police than unarmed blacks. Talk about systemic racism. All right, I got off. Well, I actually was very on topic there, but I went off on a tangent. Anyway, keep listening to the Vice President, Kamala Harris.
And black men in particular have been treated throughout the course of our history as less than human.
All right.
Black men.
I hate having to stop the audio clip every 5 seconds, but I just can't keep playing it and let those words go without responding to them. Black people have been treated less than human in America? Are you kidding me? How many black men play in the NBA, the NFL, making millions upon millions of dollars? And good for them, I say. Good for them. That's the way it should be. Don't tell me they're treated less than human in the United States. That's completely ridiculous. In many cases, they're given advantages over white people. You look at affirmative action, different scholar programs, and so on and so forth. Employment opportunities in some cases. Don't give me this. They're treated less than human. That is nothing but divisive, hateful, race-baiting rhetoric. That's what that is. Kamala Harris. I can't stand this woman.
Our fathers and brothers and sons and uncles and grandfathers and friends and neighbors. Their lives must be valued in our education system.
They are.
In our healthcare system.
They are.
In our housing system.
They are.
In our economic system.
They are.
In our criminal justice system.
They are.
In our nation.
They are. What? Are you really, you, Kamala Harris, as the Vice President of the United States, are you really addressing the country right now, making the argument that black people's lives are not valued in this country? Are you really making that argument? Keep listening.
Full stop. Because of smartphones, so many Americans have now seen the racial injustice that black Americans have known for generations.
No, because of the media
the
and
racial
the race-baiting
injustice
liberals.
That we have fought for generations, that my parents protested in the 1960s, that millions of us, Americans of every race, protested last summer. Here's the truth about racial injustice.
Yes, tell us.
It is not just a black America problem or a people of color problem. It is a problem for every American. It is keeping us from fulfilling the promise of liberty and justice for all. And it is holding our nation back from realizing our full potential.
Who is holding black people and minorities back from achieving liberty and justice for all? Who? Name them, Kamala Harris. Name the institution, name the individual, name it. You can't. Because you're just regurgitating the same old left-wing pablum that we hear over and over again. Never any evidence, never any supporting facts, no basis for your arguments. They're just empty words at this point. But you just keep repeating it, you liberals. Over and over and over again. All right. We got 14 seconds left for this audio clip. Can we do it? Kamala Harris, can we do it?
We are all.
No, we can't. No, we can't. That's it. Not for her. So there's your vice president, ladies and gentlemen. Now, after the commercial break, we're going to get on to an audio clip from the President of the United States, our dear leader, Joe Biden, who said some very similar things about race and how we have systemic racism and how basically America sucks and how our police suck. And then audio from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as well, who said that despite Chauvin being found guilty, justice hasn't been served, she said. That and more when I return. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Jayson Veley Program.
Conservatives. How many times have you been called a racist by someone on the left? What about sexist, bigoted, homophobic, xenophobic, right-wing radical extremist? These are all buzzwords that liberals use as a means of labeling conservatives as something that they're not. And let me tell you something, I, like most of you, am getting pretty damn sick of it. That's why I started my own conservative comedy series, Living with a Liberal. Hosted on the popular video sharing app TikTok, Living with a Liberal features two fictional characters, played by yours truly, whose political differences could not be more obvious. It's a comedic take on the modern-day liberal Democrat, because if they can brand us as racists and bigots, we can brand them as triggered, oversensitive snowflakes. Check out Living with a Liberal today on TikTok. Just search Jayson Veley and you'll be taken right to my homepage. I have over 100 episodes on there, so you won't be short on content anytime soon. Enjoy. Are you a pissed off liberal that wants to give me a piece of your mind? Or maybe you're a conservative that simply has a question or comment? Either way, you should know that there's a few different ways you can reach me. Feel free to send me an email at thejaysonveleyprogram@gmail.com. Or if you prefer, you can also call the show number and leave me a voicemail. 860-266-2852. Be sure to provide your name and where you're writing or calling from. Thanks a lot. I look forward to hearing from you. All right, we're going to get to an audio clip from Joe Biden about his response to the Derek Chauvin verdict. Now, I want to remind you that Joe Biden is a racist, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, yes! Yes, Joe Biden is a racist. He said many different things in the past. Very, very insulting things to people of color. Remember out on the campaign trail when he said that black people who don't vote for him aren't really black? Is that not racist? Are we not supposed to, acknowledge that as a racist statement? And there's countless other examples. Joe Biden saying that, Republicans want to put y'all back in chains, speaking to a crowd of black people. I mean, there's just countless examples. So Joe Biden is a racist, but he has the audacity to lecture the rest of the country on race in America. He has the audacity to stand up there like a nitwit and lecture the rest of us on systemic racism in the police force and in our country in general. Take a listen to Joe Biden from earlier today.
We saw how traumatic and exhausting just watching the trial was for so many people. Think about it. Those of you who are listening, think about how traumatic it was for you. You weren't there. You didn't know any of the people.
Can I ask you guys a question before we get going? I'm very serious about this. I want to know if this is just me. Are there ever times where you just think to yourself, oh my God, we have Joe Biden as the President of the United States? Do you guys ever just randomly think about that at random times in the day? Just stop and think. We have Joe Biden as the President of the United States. How did we get here? I mean, where are we? Do we slip through a wormhole and we're in some kind of alternate reality? It's like the damn Twilight Zone. Joe Biden is the President of the United States. It's like some kind of It's like some kind of quirky indie movie where, like, you know, like somehow a 10-year-old gets elected president. I mean, that's the America I feel like I'm living in right now. I don't know. I hope it's not just me. I'm wondering, I don't know, do any of you out there feel the same way? Just at random times in the day? How do we get here? What's going on? Anyway, keep listening.
But it was difficult.
Yes, difficult.
Especially for the witnesses who had to relive that day. It's a trauma. On top of the fear so many people of color live with every day.
Here we go.
When they go to sleep at night and pray for the safety of themselves and their loved ones.
All right, can I ask a question? Let me think about how I want to phrase this here. If you're a person of color and you're a lawful citizen, what do you have to fear? What do you have to fear? If you're doing everything right, you follow the law, you know, you're not, you know, doing any criminal acts or anything like that, what do you have to fear? They talk about, you know, people of color living day to day in fear, but if you're not doing anything wrong, what are you afraid of? You shouldn't be afraid of anything. Of anything. Now look, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to sit here and say that there's not racism in the police force. I'm not going to say that there isn't a single cop out there who is racist. Racism exists in the police force. Racism, unfortunately, exists in every institution in this country to a certain extent. That is, there's racists on an individual basis. Racists exist everywhere. Which I believe is quite different than saying that we have institutionalized racism, that our entire system is racist. I think saying that we have racists in this country is very different than saying we have institutionalized, structured racism. But yeah, there are definitely some racists in the police force. The vast majority of them are good, decent people, but there are racists in the police force, for sure. For sure. But we deal with them as they come. We deal with them as they come. And to suggest that black people in this country, minorities, should be afraid of the police as a whole is just such an overstatement. Such a preposterous statement. Anyway, I'm rambling. Keep listening.
Again, as we saw in this trial from the fellow police officers who testified, most men and women who wear the badge serve their communities honorably. But those few who fail to meet that standard must be held accountable, and they were today.
And they were.
One was.
Yes.
No one should be above the law.
Okay, so let's stop right there. Joe Biden just said that most police officers are good people, they do their job correct. Okay, got it. If that's the case, if you really believe that, Joe Biden, why are people like you and Kamala Harris and other Democrats talking about abolishing the police and reforming the entire police system? As opposed to saying, we'll just deal with the bad apples as they come. If the majority of police officers are good people, why do all of them need to be reformed? Can you explain that to me? Can you explain that to me?
And today's verdict sends that message. But it's not enough. We can't stop here.
Of course not.
In order to deliver real change and reform, we can and we must do more to reduce the likelihood that tragedies like this will ever happen and occur again. To ensure that black and brown people, or anyone, so they don't fear the interactions with law enforcement, that they don't have to wake up knowing that they can lose their very life in the course of just living their life.
That's not true.
They don't have to worry about whether their sons or daughters will come home after a grocery store run or just walking down the street, or driving their car, or playing in the park, or just sleeping at home.
You see, this is so sick to me, folks. This is so sick the way they paint the situation here, the way that they paint the relationship between cops and people of color. They want Americans to believe that black people can just go out, maybe for ice cream on a Friday night, and a cop just pulls up and draws a gun and shoots them. That's not how it works. That doesn't happen in this country. That does not happen. That is a grotesque statement to even suggest that that's what goes on. He knows it. Joe Biden knows it. But what he's doing here is he's causing divisiveness, folks. He's race baiting. That's what he's doing. Him and all the other libs. Kamala Harris and all of them. Keep listening.
And this takes acknowledging and confronting head-on systemic racism and the racial disparities that exist in policing and in our criminal justice system more broadly.
See, I don't get it. We have systemic racism, according to him, in the police force, but 30 seconds ago, he just admitted that most cops are good people who do their jobs right. So, which is it? Do we have systemic racism in the police force, or are most cops good? Because when you say we have systemic racism in the police force, I'm assuming you mean that most cops are racist. Knowingly or unknowingly, because now unconscious bias is apparently a thing to the left. Unconscious racism, where you don't even know you're racist, but you're racist. I hate talking about this, folks. This ongoing conversation about skin color. But the liberals drag us into this realm time and time again. We have to talk about it because they're attacking the very people in this country who are putting their lives on the line to protect us. And I'm not going to accept that.
You know, state and local government and law enforcement needs to step up, but so does the federal government.
All right, that's enough. They need to step up. They need to step up. You know what, ladies and gentlemen? How about this? How about we teach our young people to respect law enforcement? How about that? Is that a solution? I mean, if you liberals are serious about easing tensions between police and people of color, I think it needs to go both ways, no? I think we deal with the bad apple cops as they come. And yes, I admit there are bad apples in the police force. And we also need to deal with the other side. Teach our young people to respect the cops. You get pulled over, you keep your hands on the steering wheel, and you respect the law. You respect law enforcement. You do what they say. You do what they say. Because when you do what they say, you significantly reduce the chances that things will go wrong. The second you start resisting, the second you start trying to stand up to the cops, start giving them a hard time, you're going to make things 10 times worse for you. That's a message we should be telling our young people, huh? How about that, Joe Biden? How about that? I don't hear any liberals talking about that. I don't hear any liberals talking about the black-on-black crime that goes on in places like Chicago and the inner cities. I don't hear anything about that. I don't hear liberals talking about how many minorities kill black people how many minorities kill cops every year. Do you know far more cops die at the hands of minorities than minorities at the hands of cops? It's true. It's true. I talked about that last week. Why don't liberals talk about that? My point is, if they're serious about finding solutions, they should be more than willing to look at both sides of this. They're not. Their head is just their minds are just solely focused on get the cops, get the police, Take him down. Take him down. That's enough of Joe Biden, huh? Can't take any more of that guy. Not that this next audio clip is much better. Here's Ayok responding to the Chauvin verdict, saying that justice has not been served. Take a listen.
It's not justice. And I'll explain to you why it's not justice. It's not justice. And I'll explain to you why it's not justice. It's not justice because justice is George Floyd going home tonight to be with his family.
No, that would be called time travel. I hate to say it. But that's not what justice is. That's not what justice is. As a matter of fact, it's not. Justice has been served. Now you, Ayok, you're free to think that things didn't go far enough, that we need to do more, what have you. But you can't deny the fact that justice has been served. Derek Chauvin was charged on all three, was found guilty on all three charges. That is justice. That's the way the American justice system is supposed to work. So for you to say that justice has not been served, it's just a blatant lie. You may not like how it turned out, but don't say that justice hasn't been served, because that's just simply not true. Keep listening.
Justice is Adam Toledo getting tucked in by his mom tonight. Justice is when you're pulled over, there not being a gun that's part of that interaction because you have a headlight out.
What? All right, stop. What does that even mean? There not being a gun in a traffic stop? What is she talking about? This woman is an idiot. This woman is a complete idiot. She's a moron. She has an IQ of -4. She's dumb as a sack of bricks. I said it. She is. She thinks she's some kind of intellectual, some kind of, very, very smart politician. Holds her head up high. Oh, yeah. Very condescending. She's a moron. Justice is when there's no guns involved in a traffic stop for, what did she say, a taillight out. Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? If a cop pulls someone over for a simple traffic stop, you better believe they're going to have their gun. Because you don't know what's going to happen as a cop. You don't know if that person's going to, God forbid, pull their own firearm out of the dashboard. Open fire on the cops. They don't know. That's the nature of their job. There's so much uncertainty. That's one of the things that you liberals don't understand. The cops don't necessarily have it easy either. They have a very, very stressful job, especially in this environment that you liberals have created. This environment of escalating tension between cops and minorities. You liberals are responsible for it. You are. Or at least you're pouring gasoline on the fire, so to speak, at a minimum. Keep listening.
Justice.
Yeah, justice.
Is your school system not having or being part of a school-to-prison pipeline. Justice is a municipality and a government that does not, because it trickles down, right? That does not value military and armaments more than it values health care and education.
What is she talking about now? She's getting into gun control? I don't even know. It's hard to follow her. Why does it sound like she's in a wind tunnel, by the way? So there's Ayok, a complete whack job. Complete whack job. And before we go to a break, I'll just play this quick comedic clip from Nancy Pelosi, who said something very, very strange responding to the Chauvin verdict. Take a listen.
So again, thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice, for being there to call out to your mom. How heartbreaking was that? Call out for your mom. I can't breathe. But because of you and because of thousands, millions of people around the world who came out for justice, your name will always be synonymous.
Thank you for sacrificing your life for justice, she says. Well, I'm pretty sure George Floyd didn't sacrifice his life for justice. Is Nancy Pelosi off her meds again, ladies and gentlemen? Sure sounds like it. I'll be right back. Conservatives. How many times have you been called a racist by someone on the left? What about sexist, bigoted, homophobic, xenophobic, right-wing radical extremist? These are all buzzwords that liberals use as a means of labeling conservatives as something that they're not. And let me tell you something, I, like most of you, am getting pretty damn sick of it. That's why I started my own conservative comedy series, Living with a Liberal. Hosted on the popular video sharing app TikTok, Living with a Liberal features two fictional characters, played by yours truly, whose political differences could not be more obvious. It's a comedic take on the modern-day liberal Democrat, because if they can brand us as racists and bigots, we can brand them as triggered, oversensitive snowflakes. Check out Living with a Liberal today on TikTok. Just search Jayson Veley and you'll be taken right to my homepage. I have over 100 episodes on there, so you won't be short on content anytime soon. Enjoy. Are you a pissed off liberal that wants to give me a piece of your mind? Or maybe you're a conservative that simply has a question or comment. Either way, you should know that there's a few different ways you can reach me. Feel free to send me an email at thejaysonveleyprogram@gmail.com. Or if you prefer, you can also call the show number and leave me a voicemail. 860-266-2852. Be sure to provide your name and where you're writing or calling from. Thanks a lot. I look forward to hearing from you.
Mike and Crystal.
Hey Mike, have you heard of the Jimmy Z Show?
Yeah, Crystal. The Jimmy Z Show is awesome.
Which topic do you like most?
I like them all. They are all lots of fun. Do you have a favorite?
I just like Jimmy Z. His voice is so hot.
Okay, but what about his politics?
What politics?
The politics he talks about on the Jimmy Z Show.
I never noticed any politics. All I hear is the velvety smooth dulcet tone of Jimmy Z's sizzling, sexy, scintillating voice.
Holy mackerel. The Jimmy Z Show.
The Jimmy Z Show is available on Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, and iTunes.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
So a report from Newsmax.com. Biden will use a speech to Congress next week to call for police reform, according to the White House. President Joe Biden believes the bar is too high, quote unquote, for convicting police officers and will use his speech to a joint session of Congress next week to push for police reform legislation, the White House said on Wednesday. Biden is to address a joint session of Congress on April 28th, marking 100 days in office with what is arguably his biggest speech since taking office on January 20th. Will no doubt be filled with uhs and ums and drop sentences and all the rest because Joe Biden is Joe Biden. He's not the best speaker, if I may be so blunt. But he's going to use his speech to push for police reform legislation. I can only imagine what that's going to entail. He says that the bar is too high for convicting police officers in this country. Or at least that's what the White House says he believes. And I absolutely believe that's what he believes. So that should be interesting, huh, ladies and gentlemen? We'll have to see what that's all about. You know, I'm quite serious about this. Why are liberals targeting the entire police force? Why? Joe Biden, in his speech earlier today, admitted that the vast majority of police officers are good people. So why are you targeting the entire police force? What's up with that? It doesn't make any sense. What they're doing, ladies and gentlemen, and believe me when I say this is absolutely intentional, they're trying to program Americans to automatically view cops as evil and ill-intentioned. They are. That's what they want Americans to believe. There's a strategy to the way that they're talking about all of this. It's no coincidence that all of this has been completely one-sided. Before the commercial break, I listed solutions for both sides. I said we need to deal with bad apples as they come. Bad apples like, yes, Derek Chauvin. We dealt with him. The American justice system worked. And we need to continue to do that when we have cases like this. And on the flip side, we need to, as I said, teach young people to respect authority, to respect the cops. And that will cause less problems. It just will. We also need to teach young people not to riot and burn things when they don't get their way, because that doesn't help them either. Those are what I think to be very, very rational, common sense solutions. Liberals, you'll notice, whenever they talk about this issue, are extremely one-sided. They never talk about what people of color can do. It's always what cops have to do, what cops need to improve upon. We need to reform the cops, the police. It's not just a police problem. As a matter of fact, I would argue that it's actually less of a police problem. Honestly, I would. Did you hear about, let me get to this quickly. The Daily Wire: activists erupt after police kill Black Ohio girl. However, video shows that the cop protected a woman from a knife attack. Now, this is interesting to me. It goes to show how programmed people are to hate the police. Perfect example of this. Social justice activists and Democrat politicians erupted on Tuesday in a rush to judgment over the police shooting and killing a 16-year-old girl in Ohio, which came around the same time that former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was convicted on all counts in the murder trial of George Floyd. In an unprecedented move, Columbus police showed body camera footage of the shooting of a 16-year-old girl by a Columbus police officer just hours after the incident on the southeast side, the Columbus Dispatch reported. The shooting, which happened around 20 minutes before a guilty verdict was announced in the trial of Derek Chauvin, a former Minneapolis police officer who killed George Floyd, prompted hundreds to protest at the shooting site and downtown. So what happened, folks, in Ohio is a 16-year-old black girl was shot by a Columbus police officer. And leftists and activists rushed to the scene automatically without giving it two thoughts to protest, without knowing what happened, any details, none of that. They didn't care. They rushed to the scene to protest. But it was later confirmed, because police released body cam footage of the incident, it was later confirmed that, as tragic as this was, the 16-year-old girl was shot because she had a knife and was going to kill another young person with it. She was attacking another young person with this knife, and so the police officer did what they did. Again, it's a tragedy, of course. It's always a tragedy when someone so young dies. I mean, that's nothing to, nothing to celebrate, of course, nothing to look past. That's horrible. But there was a knife involved. And an innocent girl, or at least a victim, was about to be attacked by this 16-year-old with a knife. And so the police acted. So my point here is it's important to put things into context. These activists in Ohio, these leftists, rushed to the scene because they automatically thought that it was another example of a cop shooting an unarmed black person. Oh, we gotta go riot. No. Look at what happened. Collect the facts, collect the evidence, and then go from there. But they don't do that anymore, you on the left. They don't do that. And it's because they've been programmed by people in the media, people like Van Jones, honestly, and others, to hate the cops. Because they've been programmed by people like Joe Biden, the president of the United States, to believe that cops are always in the wrong. And you can see why. They're always talking from the position of, we need to reform the cops. The cops are the problem. Bad cops. Bad cops. We got to do something. Cops need to be better. And so when something like this happens, the first reaction from people, unfortunately, is the cops are in the wrong. Even if it wasn't the case. Even if they weren't in the wrong. Folks, I got to tell you, I feel so bad for police officers today. I really do. I could not imagine being a cop right now. I couldn't imagine. The stress, the political pressure. So many in our own government just clearly not on their side. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace the way our police officers are being treated. And we'll have to see what Joe Biden, our dear leader, has to say next week when he addresses Congress, when he comes out with this proposed legislation for police reform. That should be interesting. We'll stay on top of it, folks. You can bet your ass that we'll talk about it here on the Jayson Veley program. But that's all the time I have for tonight. I'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, for another episode. Until then, God bless, and God save this great nation. Have a great night.